little over 2 years now. Started on the truck from the bottom. Now I do a lot of stuff. Not doing delivers anymore, but mostly working on the canning line, packaging, running quality control on cans coming off the line, dissolved oxygen tests, carb tests, fill weights and anything else that operator needs or pack out needs, stuff like that. Also handling some of our regional distribution now, prepping those shipments, stuff like that. General maintenance around. Just in such a small company, you end up doing a lot of different things that you didn't even know. So it's been fun.
Nice. All right, let's move on to Lindsay.
You're unmuted now. You're fine, I think. Now you're muted.
All right, while Lindsay's figuring out her microphone, let's move on to Oscar.
Hello.
Hello.
I was actually originally homebrewing in the 90s, in the mid-90s, back when they had the little cans of hopped wort and the little sachets of bad yeast and sugar. I did it for a few years, but I was disappointed in my results. I didn't have temperature control. There were no real homebrew stores that I knew about. There was this one weird wine place in Manhattan on Prince Street where I got my stuff from. And then I guess around 2014, I decided to try to get back into it. My mind was blown, like now what we have to use. And so 2014 is when I started homebrewing again. And in terms of work, I was with other fans and Alex Biedermann, hanging out with them at Keg and Lantern, and they were very nice about that, and I got to learn quite a lot. And then I figured, well, I need to get a game up, and so I took the BG intensive brewers course there, along with an internship that was part of the course, and at Fifth Hammer and working there as well. And Mary accepted me as their very first intern there, so that was really, really great. So that's kind of my journey. For the moment, unfortunately, due to this pandemic, but hope to get back in the saddle.
Nice, fingers crossed. All right, Alex Biedermann, you are up.
Yeah, I started, I think I'm coming up on 7 years doing at this point, and the kind of usual thing, my parents gave me a kit. I think it was Brooklyn Homebrew Shop or a Brooklyn Brew, but it was some actually tasted the first beer because I brewed it at home on Christmas and then they bottled it, and I actually never had any. So then I think about 4 years later, I joined Jeff at Lantern. It was sort of very fortunately on the heels of a Brewdies, I think it's like collab day, wrong, the temperature probe on the tank failed, and me and Joe from Bruisers and Brewdies kind of hung out there till the bitter end, and I ended up chatting with Brett Taylor and Jeff and got on Saturday shifts with them brewing kettle sours. Did that for kind of moonlighting on Saturdays for about a year, and then jumped in, started brewing full time, and then did about a year of that doing cellar work and also brewing. We kind of alternated the job every other week. And then I wound up taking a job with Jason Saylor over at Strong Rope, and I've been there now since, I think I'm coming up on a year. I think I started in July. So do just about all the stuff that needs to get done on the brewing and cellar side there. So yeah.
Nice. Otto, how about you?
I think the question had a couple of parts, and I
Yes.
could talk a lot, so I'm just going to sort of say some things.
Yeah. How long have you been homebrewing, and how'd you
back,
get into pro brewing?
I think cool. I started homebrewing, I think it was 14. Got into it as soon as I realized that the answer to the question, like, how is beer made, is actually super complicated, and like the number of different variables that impact them is basically countless. So in trying to action, reading and a ton of research, and at some point it occurred to me that it might be, built to apply. So Point Beer Works, the brewery on Waverly, not actually in Greenpoint, is the first Brewminaries used to have meetings. And when that facility closed, I talked Taylor into giving me a job at Strong Rope, preceded Alex by some number of months. And that was really nice, that brewery at the time. And so I got to spend a couple of years there, working with Jason and to sort of, experience the journey that new ingredients have gone on. Really, really cool. And then almost 2 years ago now, started working at Grimm at the first production facility for them that's up in East Williamsburg. Well, you'll probably know that. But there, I'm a brewer. I became the plant manager because I was pretty well suited to, fix equipment when it design new devices or tools for some special things that we like to do up there. And yeah, that's what I'm still doing now.
Nice. All right, Lindsay, let's hear your story.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm borrowing a computer because mine totally crapped out and I had to send it into Apple.
Oh, fun.
I can't go there. So had to figure out the settings. Anyways, I started homebrewing like 2014, and I guess I feel like compared to a lot of you guys, I really more intimate with product. But then I knew I wanted to start a restaurant brewery, so I started going, and then I immediately just started working on a business plan and kind of came out from there. My home brewing to the extent was just really just like, to allow myself to get a beer or at that point in time, because I was single, really busy job. Did I miss any other questions or to be a part, because I was not paying attention for the first part?
Totally fine. That's great. And you're brewing. But everyone really wants to know about your suit of armor. Is like that before we move on.
I wish I could have a beer in his hand and have him drinking it. My house is full of kind of weird stuff, especially a lot of weapons. We got this at an auction. It is, but it was still handmade in Spain in the 1920s. We slowly tried to start polishing. Did come across the person's signature on it. Yeah, we got it for $400 at an auction. That was a fucking deal. Sorry. That's the story. That is full suit of armor, sword, and yeah.
The benefit to our virtual events is really appearing inside everyone.
I had to I was built in the 1800s, so we have this really intimate dining room here, and the only place my daughter can't quite out where to find me yet. So trying to avoid being interrupted.
Totally fine.
So we wanted to ask you all, what is the quick question with maybe a quick answer? What's the beer that got you into brewing? I guess Dan, start with. Let's just go in the same order that we just did intros.
I think I would have to go with Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale. It was just such a solid beer, and at the time, like a while ago, like it was so different than all the macro beer on the market, and it was so full of flavor, and it was like, okay, this is what a beer can be also, and then let me down, and then that just brings you into the black hole of IPAs, and then just something hoppier and hoppier, and then you start making them, and then you can see, wow, there's just you can just go to so many places with all these different ingredients that really you never saw before.
Yeah.
That was out there.
Oscar, what about you?
Well, my first memorable beer was Chimay Grand Reserve, and my friend and I used to save our money up and go to this one store and split it, and it was like heaven. I'm kind of from the old school stuff, so most European things like Salvatore, Old Peculiar, some of the British beers, and so that was what blew my mind in terms of what beer could be. I used to, when I lived in Jersey, I would just drive out to, I lived in Jersey City, I would drive out to Secaucus, this one little liquor store, beer store, and I would just buy all these, European imports. So that's kind of what got me going way back when.
Nice. Alex, do you have a beer that particularly inspired you?
Yeah, I had a group of friends. Before I was brewing, a bunch of friends in college were homebrewers, and we just would kind of hang out and drink and watch them homebrew. And it spiraled off into we did our own little Saison day, and we would just get as many as we could possibly find, which mainly meant loading the fridge up with DuPont. And then we'd just drink those. At the time, I think, what was the other one? Pretty Things, Jack Dior was around. But I would say when I started, the thing that most inspired me was Saison DuPont.
Nice. That's a good one. Otto, what about you?
Forgot to unmute myself. I think I would actually have to say a app called Rainier that is, and that is really because I think it's the first time that I wondered where a beer came from, who brewed it, and then discovered that there was something behind the label that was actually a brew recipes, and that brewery might have been through generations of different ownership, and that was really the first thing that started to even though the beer is not really that remarkable, that was the first time I sort of got tipped off that there might be something kind of more, and I was probably underage and, just curious.
Can you say the name of the beer again? It got cut off briefly, of course, in that very moment. It's called Rainier. It's got a beautiful red and gold label with a picture of Mount Rainier in the background. For anyone that grew up in Seattle would recognize the old brewery, which is this 5-story tall, crazy facility with used to have a big neon R on the top, right next to the highway.
Lindsay, what about you? Is there any particular beer that inspired you to get into brewing?
Yeah, I think probably I'd have to say 2 beers for styles. One of my all-time favorites, kind of since maybe I was legally able to drink, maybe even before that, was Left Hand Milk Stout. I am from Longmont, Colorado, and visiting that brewery, it was always very inspiring to me. And then as I kind of started to get familiar with IPAs, it was Lagen. Sorry, my daughter has found me. Sorry about the background noise.
She's great.
Lagunitas Maximus was one of my favorites. Bye. Shh. So I had started brewing some stouts, and I had decided I hated dealing with lactose and I wasn't going to deal with the nitro system. So that kind of tossed out left-hand milk stout. And then I really started brewing to strive for that awesome Maximus flavor. So those were kind of first two styles I started brewing because of those two beers.
Nice.
Yeah.
So were there any unexpected challenges that you guys encountered when you started brewing professionally, working professionally? Like what, I guess, was different than what you had pictured in your mind of the professional brewery experience?
And by the way, a question we prepared and also asked by Christian in the Q&A. So the viewers want to know.
And you guys can just jump in, whoever has a thought in their mind, and hopefully it won't be too chaotic.
That's about the physical nature of brewing in a, like a 15 barrel system. You're lifting hoses and moving kegs. I knew it was going to be hard work, but you get in really good shape moving that stuff around. But the scale it was a little bit of like, oh, right, this is really physically hard labor.
This is the hardest job I've ever had, but probably the most rewarding.
Yeah, the physicality is definitely a big deal. I mean, even just the fact that you're walking around on concrete all day, not to mention like the lifting and all of that stuff. But there's also just the element of, you're in a factory. You're not in your kitchen. And I think it's kind of easy to forget because it's a cool factory. Like there's beautiful stainless and, the beer is exciting and like you might have a nice tap room up front, but, fundamentally that is what it is. And I think that's one of the major things that, kind of sets in over time as you realize like, oh, this is the workplace that I'm always going to be in. It's like it's concrete and steel.
Safety concerns as well, I imagine, that you encounter in the brewery that you don't have to think about with home brewing.
Yeah, for sure.
Some pretty serious chemicals too. Wow.
Yeah, I have a saying called "keep the fear alive." You always have to be aware. You can't be too complacent.
Yeah, that's what happens. I mean, I already have a parasitic burn. I don't know about you guys, but it just seems everybody always has at least one, I guess.
PPE. Always wear your personal protection equipment too. I mean, that's the safety issue. That'll save your life.
I'm going to say along the lines of safety, I used to be in like consultative sales. So I consulted large manufacturers on their safety protocols. Like if they had been written up by OSHA or were preparing for an OSHA visit, I helped go in there and audit their facilities before OSHA would. So that's something where the safety is super top on my radar, and it probably annoys the shit out of everybody else in the brewery. And I think that's been annoying because I'm that person's like, we need this protocol. And then, they're like, yeah, did we really want to be in compliance? But it's a long road to develop your safety program. And also to get people that want to fully comply, like, oh, that's overkill or whatever. It's like, okay, until an accident happens. But I'd have to say we're actually, we're doing pretty good in the brewery. But yes, safety is a hot topic and always should be. I think there's the other component of just pleasing your customers. It's not an always internally focused, like, I want to brew this beer because I like it and blah, blah, blah. It's really paying attention to what people want, but also balancing that with what your niche is. And, we're still in the early stages of starting our brewery, obviously, but, and with quarantine, it's just really fucking weird. I run our numbers and we talk about it. It's like, I'd like to see some styles selling better But right now we're talking to a customer base that's taking away what they know and what they're comfortable with. And we kind of have to pay attention to that as well to make sure that we survive. So these are things you would never think about starting a brewery. Like, oh, this is the style I'm really good at, or I have this recipe. It's like, okay, we might be able to do it once, but it might never be repeated. So
has there been anything that have surprised you in terms of like beers you've made that you like thought would appeal widely and didn't, or maybe the opposite where you thought something was maybe a little niche, but it ended up being something that people liked a lot?
I mean, I think it's too early to speak right now for us, just because we still have our lambics in the barrels, and those won't be released for months. So we don't even know that. I mean, we're hoping those are going to be received well.
I'm excited about them.
One thing that, did surprise us when we had our first can release was patience and fortitude in a week topped every other beer that we had sold in the past 6 weeks before it, within a week. And we had also released a hoppy beer, our pale ale, No Pretense. And that took about a week and a half longer to sell out than Patience and Fortitude. So yes, that beer just, we felt, I mean, the thing is, you always have to think, okay, we're critical of our own beer, but we all really liked Patience and Fortitude. Wow, this is a good beer. Can't wait to can it. But the reception from the public was like, very rewarding. And that was, that thing sold out a hell of a lot quicker than what we thought. And we canned it again this week. So that was one of those surprises. Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, I'm having a Bloody Mary this morning, you guys.
Nice.
You never know what beer is going to sell and what's not. An IPA will just be super popular. And it's like, why this IPA, not the last IPA?
Yes.
You're like, oh, I bet this lagers are going to sell really quick, and then a month later they're still here.
Not anymore. You guys sold out.
Yeah,
There's
that's not the case. I don't know. I think
there's this
appreciation thing is helping though.
Sorry, Dan. There's like a push and pull as well in terms of like what your customers know you for making. Like, Grimm had been making IPA for like 6 years before we made a Pilsner, which, happened after we opened the brewery. And so, despite the fact that is something that people in general want, it took and is taking a long time for the awareness of that as like something that people can buy from us to like sort of people to get used to that idea. Because, we're really happy with how those beers are coming out. But it's not something that's necessarily part of how people think of that brand, which has been a big realization for me. That's not how I think about brewing. I'm not on the sales side at all, but get affected by the sales side because, we'll come in on Monday and, why are we only packaging 300 cases of lager? Like, that's really weird. What's going on? And then, we go talk to the people doing distro and they're like, oh yeah, we can't sell more than that. Like that's, that you get what you get. It's like, oh, whoa, that's wild. Cause I want, 1 million cans of Pilsner when we make it.
Do breweries pay attention at all to like what other breweries in the neighborhood or in the area are doing when deciding what to make? Because I know when I think about like as a consumer, like we've been doing a run to Strong Rope, Finback, Wild East a lot just because you guys are all so close and you're pretty close to where I live. And so, we'll look ahead at what everyone has and go, okay, we'll get a pale ale from here and a sour from here and an IPA from here to sort of mix it up and get something from everyone. But then sometimes we'll look and be like, okay, well, they have a lot of IPAs, so maybe we'll go somewhere else this week. Is that something that you guys take into account, or is everyone kind of just like making their own brew schedules based on what they feel?
I think especially because the walk-in business is important to all of us, and people do go, like you just described, to all of these breweries that are close together in one trip or over a couple of days. yes, we totally think about that. And, you know, it doesn't happen all the time, but yeah, occasionally you'll see like, oh, that brewery is releasing the thing that we were planning to brew next week. Maybe we can delay that for a little while. Because there are some times when it's interesting to have, you know, 2 breweries rare style, or 2 breweries beer with adjuncts that have the same adjuncts. But most of the time people don't, you know, they aren't like home brewers interested in doing a tasting panel. They're just people that want to buy, you know, a beer from a brewery and a different beer from a different brewery, which is you know, that's an assumption we're making, but there is a little bit of push and pull there.
Cool. I think we are almost out of time, but does anyone have any favorite or least favorite trends going on in the beer world right now? And you can answer this in like the current pandemic world, or you can pretend it's still January and everything is normal and just talk about in general outside of the pandemic world. But anything going on that is trendy that you wish was not, or that you think is underrated and wish was more popular?
I think what's nice is the lagers and pilsner scene is kind of happening a little bit better, just because it's such a great beer and it just showcases your style. At Fifth Hammer, we also did like a British bitter Fuggle Nugget. And it's on an engine. It's like fantastic, but people wouldn't think to want that unless you were to just say, try this, you know? So those are kind of nice things to see, you know, outside of the box. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think Josh Bernstein has stopped by and talked about some of the shift in what people are appreciating right now, and some amount of simplicity or familiarity is being emphasized. And, you know, people often, like, we'll have pub ale crowlers somehow leading sales, not over the cans, because that's kind of the easiest thing to move, but I'm interested to see people really appreciating like simpler beers and sort of be like, oh, you guys make a bitter, that's great, I'm excited about that. So that's something that's encouraging for us, and I think that's been cool. We're more recently kind of jumping on the lager train and hopefully getting some of those into cans sometime during the summer, so that's always exciting too.
Yeah, I feel like there's kind of just lower ABV beers in general. I don't know, when you just sit down and enjoy multiple beers and not get totally wasted. I feel like I've had more questions in the tap room of people wanting lower ABV beers. Some people want something strong, but very rarely people are like, okay, I'm taking this crowler home to finish myself. I'm drinking alone. I don't want to wake up with a hangover or something like that. So again, this whole pandemic thing is definitely creating trends that I think normally wouldn't exist. But, you know, we are getting more people asking about farmhouse beers, which was nice, which we really like. And then, I don't know, the lager game, I'm seeing it in the comments. Yes. I feel like there's definitely a lot of people asking about lager beers, pilsners, stuff like that.
Nice. I saw you guys just canned a Grisette. I'm very excited to pick that up.
We're hoping that that's, you know, some people come in and like, oh, I just want something easy drinking on the beach and the sunny day, which would have been kind of like no pretense if they weren't a Pilsner fan. We're hoping that Fluent becomes that, because damn, that beer is so good. So
looks beautiful also.
I wouldn't dream of speaking against a style that people want to pay money for, but I will say that I'm also really excited about lagers and about low ABV beers, which is largely what I have been homebrewing for a long time. I usually don't homebrew anything above like 5%. But yeah, you know, at the brewery, like there's an extreme deal of care that goes into the lagers that we make, because, you know, we have the system for it. And so like, in order to not brew IPA, we are needing to spend basically twice as long both brewing and fermenting, which is like, yeah, that's a big cost for us. We're doing it because we're excited about being able to make those styles. You know, I never would have thought that we would make a Maibach, but it seemed like people might be willing to drink something, you know, strong and malty from us. And so we just, we went for it. And fortunately, people wanted to buy it. So the more sort of it seems that people are interested and willing to buy, something that's takes us more energy and cost sometimes, we're more than happy to do it because I love making those beers.
Yeah, right. Sometimes people will surprise you. I keep hoping West Coast IPAs will come back.
Yes.
A good clean bitter beer sometimes, but our last one seemed to do really well. It was kind of all caught us by surprise.
Yeah, ours did too. I think you might be onto something. The last two that we've made, yeah, people want it.
I feel like it's coming back. We're getting tired of the hazy stuff now.
I'm here for it.
Pia says Russell just cheered for West Coast IPAs from the other room, so we're getting some comments that a lot of people are very on board.
We have another one on the schedule. I think I'm brewing it in 2 weeks.
Weirdly, I know my mom is on board with West Coast IPAs coming back.
Yeah, our revamp
of a KCBC, not West Coast IPA, but just one of the KCBC IPAs I had for Mother's Day, and she drank it and liked it. I know she always appreciates a good West Coast.
Nice. Our new, I think Seeds of Love is coming back in cans next Friday, and we sort of skewed it more West Coast, so hopefully that delivers somewhat on that. It may not quite be as bitter, but we'll tinker with that.
We have one quick viewer question that someone is asking. We can just, if you guys can just use where's the raise hand function? Just use physically raise your hand. I say, not digital hands. Raise your hands if you anyone has table beers on the way. From Chad is a table beers question.
We've talked about Fluent kind of being a table beer a lot, so that would be our answer for that.
Would you like to introduce your co-brewer?
Huh?
Would you like to introduce your co-brewer?
Oh, this is Cora. Say hi.
Hi.
I think she's quickly becoming as recognizable in the beer scene as Violet has, so she's in good company, I think.
I think we are just about out of time and need to go check back in with our brewers, but thank you guys so much for joining us and talking to us about the homebrew to pro brew transition.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Best of luck with all of your to-go sales.
Thank you.
I'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Yeah.